This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek Podcast for the Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here.
Hi, everyone. Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Glad to have you on board. Just a reminder for everyone, do take some time to drop me send me an email about comments you have about the show, ideas for new shows. Perhaps you want to be on our show. Be glad to hear about that. You can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Good news, carry some criticisms as well. I'll certainly take those. I'll be happy to hear those. And of course, ideas for the show. Do take a few moments, give us a like here, join us on Facebook and be part of the revolution as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family on Facebook. Love to hear from you. Well, today I have a very special guest. I've known him for several years, Michael Beran of the Wildlife Command Center headquarters out of St. Louis, Missouri. Welcome aboard, Mike.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been in wildlife control for a very long time. You've established some really successful businesses. So give a little bio and then about some of your business experience.
Sure. I don't mind talking about myself. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Well, good. We're glad to have you then.
I'm the oldest of four boys, and I was literally raised in the swamps of Catahoula, Louisiana.
Wow.
And that's where my wildlife adventure began. And I graduated high school early. I was one of those 17-year-old graduates. And immediately my mom and dad signed for me to go in the Navy. So I took that as a hint. And I took off, but I immediately volunteered for submarine duty, and I did my stint in the Navy on submarines working on nuclear missiles. And so, technically I tell people that I am a rocket scientist.
Nice.
Literally.
Okay. Nice.
After the Navy, I worked up the corporate ladder. Like, I was lucky enough to get hired on by the Marriott Corporation, and they have a very strict, stringent corporate ladder. And so I started climbing that ladder when, I was still young. I was in my 30s, and climbed to the top of the ladder. And then I decided that I needed to branch out on my own. So I opened up my own restaurant and ran that successfully. That restaurant was purchased and bought out. And then I got into construction, became the vice president of a construction company. And the whole time I'm doing all this, of course, I'm like training birds of prey. I'm a master falconer. I'm like doing all this hobby work with the animals. Well, suddenly the construction company just out of the blue went bankrupt. And I couldn't believe it because we had $45 million worth of work on the books. Anyway, they gave me a big severance package, and I had enough of the corporate environment. So I told my wife, Bonnie, I'm going to trap animals for a living. And I think she threw a shoe at me from across the living room.
So how many years ago was that? When did you start your business?
So I started a wildlife company in 2009. It was called Tenacious Avian Predators. And my intent was I was going to use my trained birds of prey to chase pigeons and starlings and all these avian predators. Well, at the time, I didn't realize that was not diversified enough. And also it was 2009. We were really cranking. The industry was really just starting about that time. Maybe that 2005, 2009, that's when the industry started getting a little bit of traction, and some real teeth, and organizations were formed and really legitimized as a business, kind of in that time frame. Anyway, Tenacious Avian Predators didn't succeed. So I was lucky enough to run into a gentleman named Mark Dotson. And Mark Dotson made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I started working with his organization, and just a great structure, great organization, taught me a ton. And then in 2013, I developed the Wildlife Command Center because I wanted a centralized organization where I could work from a centralized area and be able to do multiple things from like a core company, a core corporation.
Mhm.
At that time, I was in Shreveport, Louisiana,
Okay.
but I decided that that was too small and I needed a bigger area. So me and my wife went hunting around the country and we landed in St. Louis, Missouri. It's got a great airport. It's got incredible infrastructure, wonderful interstate highways and structure. And it's got three major rivers, the Missouri, the Mississippi, and the Merrimack. And all of those bring the bats to St. Louis.
Wow.
And so the bat population in St. Louis is phenomenal. And so that's kind of the story of how I got the company started in St. Louis.
Yeah. So you got started with AL Wildlife Control. Is that the name of that franchise company?
I did purchase a franchise with Mark Dotson. It's called AL Animal Control.
Right. AL Animal Control. Yeah. And then he sold out several, 2013, 2014. It's been a while since he sold out, and now it's owned under new management now. But
yeah, it's
that's how you got you started. So
yeah,
how many shops do you have now? I understand you have multiple offices from what I understand.
Yeah. So diversifying is important, and so diversifying your markets, if you're going to expand, if you want to expand, diversification is key. And so I originally opened a new market because when I was in Shreveport, Louisiana, the seasonal flux was so great that I was starving, and then there was abundance, and then I was starving again. So I was like, when I moved to a new location, which was St. Louis, I'm going to make sure that I have at least another office that's a little bit southern and an office that's a little bit northern, so that I'm not in feast or famine mode all the time.
Gotcha.
And
now,
so
what is the difference in terms of population size for Shreveport? I mean, St. Louis is a major metropolitan center. So Shreveport is what?
Yeah.
A couple 100,000?
Shreveport, 600,000.
600,000.
Okay. Yeah, 600,000. And St. Louis is 3 million.
Okay. So you really scaled up in a big way there. Okay.
Yeah. And also, if we ever get into tips, that's certainly one of them, is knowing your demographics and your population. And also how are you able to get from where you headquarter to the furthest customer away from you? But that's the boring minutia of running a business.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people struggle with that because when I talk to them, people say, how do I grow my business or something? I do think that people keep forgetting that population matters. You can't always run a successful quote unquote business in every location, because if you don't have people that have expendable income and a large enough number of those people, you're not going to be able to make it no matter how good you are.
Well, you have to think of it in terms of diversification. For instance, if I was an operator and the only thing I wanted to do was catch squirrels, then I've got just a small population that's going to have squirrel problems.
Right.
Same thing. If I was an operator and I wanted to operate in the United States, if I'm in a small city, perhaps the one I grew up in, then I've just got a small percentage of customers that are going to need my services. Right. So you do have to take that into consideration, is how much money do you want to make, or how big a business do you think you can run? And it has a lot to do with population.
Yeah. And so you moved from Shreveport. Did you keep your office open in Shreveport, or did you close that down?
No, I closed that down.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, in about 6 to 8 months, we could probably have a whole nother podcast conversation on just 2010 to 2013, things that transpired during that time.
Yeah. So because you started your business in the teeth of the Great Recession. I mean, right. Which was amazing. I mean, so you were, businesses were crashing all over the place and the market was in a huge deadfall, but you obviously found it sort of recession proof.
Yeah. So this industry is recession proof. certainly. However, you will have fluctuations because when people have a lot of money, they tend to spend it on their biggest investment, and that's their home.
Mm.
When they don't have a lot of money available, they tend to just operate out of crisis. And when the raccoon finally drops through the ceiling, then they'll call you. When they got plenty of money, they notice the louver vent being bent open.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I hear you. No, absolutely correct. So tell a little bit about how you started your business. You closed down in Shreveport, went to St. Louis, and when did you decide to open your second shop?
Well, so the decision to open up the second shop, which was Little Rock, Arkansas,
Okay.
was really had to do a lot with personnel. And by the way, I'll note that where I open, there's a business side to it, and there's also a personal relationship with someone who wants to run the operation there. You know,
okay.
But Little Rock, Arkansas, I had a technician there in Little Rock. In that 2012, 2013 time in error, I was forced to turn the business over to him.
Okay.
And he, after a couple of years, just admitted that he was not a business person, and he didn't want that responsibility, nor he really wanted things to go back to the way they were, where I handled the business end of it, and he was out there trapping and catching squirrels and interacting with the customers and doing the things that he loved and that he was really, really good at. Excellent technician, just really poor business person.
Yep.
So we opened up Little Rock, Arkansas after, a 24-month period of time. And then we realized that we needed a little bit more diversification. So we went a little bit further south, and then we went a little bit further west. And that has been a really good tactic, a strategy, because now our the gross sales fluctuation is not as great. It's you still have a fluctuation. It's just not as great.
Okay. And so what would be, if we have these, obviously our audience out there, some of them want to grow their business and scale up. Can you give one or two obstacles that need to be overcome, and what your advice would be for that? Or because I do think it's important that people look within themselves and ask themselves, can they handle the stress of multiple shops? I do think there's certain personality types that either you can do it or don't. I'm certainly not one that can do that. A man's got to know his limitations, as I say, right? So could you talk a little about that?
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, Stephen, this is a very, very deep subject. This is a path that we can go way down, because one of the things that I had to understand and realize early on is that I cannot control everything. I cannot control everything. One, I don't have the mental capacity to do it. Two, I don't have the emotional strength to do it. And so early on, I was able to turn loose of things and delegate responsibilities to people. And in addition to that, be comfortable and at peace with decisions that people I delegate to make.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're not the same as what I would do.
Right.
They're not so far off the reservation that there's a problem with it. But for a lot of people who are very, very strong-willed and want to control all the situation around them, and their life is great because they have such control over the things around them, allowing somebody else, delegating somebody else some authority and power is usually a difficult thing. Because when they make a decision, you have to reward the fact that they made a decision. Now, if it's right or wrong, if it's good or bad, or if it could have been different, those are all conversations that you can have with that person as learning experiences. But as a business owner, you can only grow as big as you are capable of growing yourself. And at some point, you have to delegate authority and power.
And how did you find that easier for yourself, or did you find that you had to sort of grow yourself in terms of that attitude? And what was the strategy that you used to help you overcome that, that teeth gritting moment? I wish he made a different decision. How did you overcome that?
So I'll tell you that even yesterday I was gritting my teeth and somebody made a decision that was different from what I would have done.
Gotcha.
However, I always bring it back in my mind. I was like, look, making that decision was better than not making a decision at all.
Right.
You know,
okay.
it was a decision that moved us forward. Maybe it wasn't what I would do, but however, I have to understand that everybody is not me. And also everybody is trying to grow. I think that everybody in my organization is really trying to grow. I really don't have any dead wood in my organization right now. I do thin the forest, and certainly I burn the brush, and so I don't tend to have forest fires, but you do have to tend to that. But my point being that everybody is not me. Everybody is growing, and I didn't become me, the person that's on this podcast today, overnight. It was something that grew over time.
So so it sounds like you have a lot of trust in your staff, in your people. And so you've had to obviously get to that place where you can trust them, and even trust them when they do things that you don't necessarily wouldn't have been your way. And
right.
So that's where you have to get to that level of commitment to find that. So finding the right people sounds critical.
Yeah, well, that is critical. In other words, I'm going to tell you, we typically, our hiring process is long and drawn out. As a matter of fact, I just brought a young lady on board that I have been interviewing and making proposals to for the last 3.5 years.
Oh my goodness.
It wasn't until just recently that I heard through the grapevine that she was dissatisfied with her current work environment. So I made another proposal. And this time the timing was right, and she came on board. As a matter of fact, I'm in Las Vegas working on a movie. She's back home in the headquarters at St. Louis being trained by my staff.
Nice.
Now, what's not being said here? I'm not directly training her.
Right.
So
do you find yourself recruiting all the time, or are you just always
constantly
open to looking for those people? So you're willing to poach, obviously, other people from other companies.
I'm willing to do whatever survival requires of me.
Nice.
That's legal.
Yeah. Right. Well, you brought up
you can't poach someone who is extremely happy, satisfied, and loyal. And I really don't try to do that. I haven't done that. Yeah. However, other industries, people have dissatisfaction, and I try to line up a person's goals and needs and see if I can meet those goals and needs. And if I can, then I'll approach them, especially if they're an animal lover. Yeah. If they're an animal lover, animal oriented, if they have animal magnetism, that's kind of the key to get into that particular person.
Gotcha. Well, you brought up the movie thing. So this has been something fascinating. You've been working towards getting into television, movies, that whole media for a very long time. And I understand you finally have a pilot coming out soon. So talk about that journey that you're finally beginning to see at least the light at the end of the tunnel. We'll see if your pilot takes off. And so talk to our audience about that.
Sure. Absolutely. It is something, I think that as an operator, you always have to have goals that are far reaching. And certainly, 2008 was the very first time I was involved with an actual movie. And it was because I was a master falconer and they needed an owl in the movie. And so I trained this Eurasian eagle owl to do what the movie needed it done. And I was enamored with the process. Also, the companionship and the camaraderie and the professionalism on a movie set is just unrivaled in anything. I mean, it's just amazing how competent every single person on a movie set either seems to be or they are. So I was really drawn to that. And and I started working on a different reality TV show. It's called Billy the Exterminator. It was filmed in Shreveport because that's where Billy was. My business was in Shreveport at the time. And I saw what that reality program did for that company. And I learned a lot of lessons of how not to do things.
Right.
A
Okay.
lot.
Right.
A lot of lessons on how not to do things. But it stuck in my mind that no matter what I thought of the characters or what I thought of the business practices of that particular business, they pretty much shut down all their advertising, and that company grew, 100% that first year that Billy the Exterminator come out. And then they were constantly on a growth cycle without having to spend any money on advertising.
Yeah.
Now, that's not my end goal, but it's the growth that I saw. The show lended a certain amount of authority to that company, and people looked at it, even though in our industry we look at it as fairly ridiculous. The viewership looked at Vexcom Pest Control as an authority in pest control just because they had a TV show, and it was unfounded authority, but it worked. And so I got it in my mind that I needed a reality TV show based around Wildlife Command Center and our 5 divisions that we operate in Wildlife Command Center. So I started toward that end. It is a long road. I have been rejected a lot. I have been ridiculed by my peers. I have been told no so many times, but I've always had a philosophy that no is not a failure. No is just a means and a stepping stone to get to a yes, and you need that positive thought process, that positive mental energy to get through it if you're going to make it. But I started with animals. I was training animals for movies. And then while on a movie set, I'm a go-getter, man. I'm going to tell you what, I will hustle a movie set. And if I see any job that I'm allowed to do, I'll ask to do it, especially if I see failure, A really good example is I was on a Samuel Jackson movie. Nice. And all the extras were there. And I was there just as an extra. And the guy that was supposed to drive the backhoe to dig the grave that they were supposed to throw the body into, he didn't show up. And so he didn't show up. And so everybody's just standing around, and there's all this murmuring going on. And we're like, what's going on? And then the first AD is like, we're trying to find a backhoe operator. And I pulled out my wallet and I said, I got a card. I can operate a backhoe. And he's like, really? Let us see you do it real quick. So I got on the backhoe and I showed him I could do it. And baby, there you go. I'm in the opening scene of that movie.
Yeah, you saved them hundreds, if not tens of thousands of dollars, because it's expensive being on a movie set. I mean, that clock is tick. So that's an amazing story. So, and what was the name of the Samuel Jackson movie? Do you remember?
So it's one word: cleaner.
Cleaner. Okay.
Yes. And nice. The premise of it is Samuel Jackson runs this cleaning service where he cleans up after people, specifically murder scenes and things of that nature. Well, he cleaned up the wrong murder scene one time, and so all this drama unfolds.
Oh wow, great! That's awesome.
But it is pretty fun.
So you were an extra. Talk a little bit about how do you become an extra? Is that did you work as an extra to try to build some connections and learn a little bit more about the industry? What was the purpose of being an extra for yourself?
I was being hired to have animals on movies kind of frequently enough, but I love the movie set so much. The easy way to get on a movie set is to just go to a local casting company and sign up through their little casting thing as an extra. They're basically, they're looking for middle-aged white guys. So, I fit that bill perfectly, and they just need a face, But also, I've got a good posture at prior military. I got a short haircut. So anytime they needed a soldier or a police officer or anything of that nature, they would pull me out and I would start doing it. And so I always made that connection, but I always started building that resume, that movie resume. And, until the point where I created an IMDb. Well, I didn't create it, but IMDb, the International Movie Database, had so much data on me that I was able to put together something that looked like, I was kind of in the industry. And then you fast forward a little bit, and in 2016, 2017, I really, really decided we needed a reality TV show. So I started going out and looking at producers that were interested. I created a little sizzle reel just off my iPhone and some of the things that we did. I got some interest. We run into some failure. We got some rejection. Animal Planet has actually rejected me twice.
Wow.
We've brought a program to Animal Planet 2 different times since 2016, once in 2016, once in 2018, and then finally again in 2020. But this time it stuck. We changed the formatting. We didn't bring them the same thing every time. But I think part of it is this. In 2018, I decided that if I was going to do the movie and entertainment industry, that maybe I should become more entertaining. And so I started taking acting classes so that I could present better, so that I could project better, so that I could have control of my body language, my facial expressions, and some of these things. And it really seems to have made a lot of difference, taking those acting classes.
Wow.
And now I continue to take acting classes because I like them. It's fun. It's interaction that I really enjoy. I have no intentions of becoming an actor. I just have a lot of fun doing it and a lot of opportunity. And it's leading me to the path that I want to go. And that is to star or showcase my company in a reality TV show.
And it sounds like you have your pilot coming out soon. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
What's the name of it?
So the pilot is called Bare Hands Rescue. The premise is we rescue people from wild animals, mostly barehanded.
Okay.
Now, let's talk about the release real quick. Then we'll get into some of the details.
Okay.
So this Sunday, August the 22nd at 10 p.m. Eastern time, Animal Planet will release the pilot. And then it's going to go into the regular programming and it's going to be available on Animal Planet. You can also download Animal Planet Go on your iPhone or on your Android. And if you don't have cable TV, you can watch the show via your iPhone or your Android by downloading Animal Planet Go. Now, the best news, Discovery Plus has picked it up and they are going to start streaming it August the 22nd.
Wow. Okay.
And
this is just the pilot. So are you thinking
this is just the pilot?
And so how do they determine whether this is going to be translated, whether they're going to quote unquote pick you up? Is that the right word? Pick up your show? How does that work?
Well, one, it's a big mystery.
Okay.
All
right. I would think downloads may play a part of that. So if we can get a lot of people downloading the show, may help.
So the Nielsen ratings are definitely going to be a big part of it. How many people are watching it on Animal Planet? How many people are picking it up through normal programming and scheduled timing? But their big emphasis is going to be on the streaming platform. How many times is it watched? How many times is it downloaded? And what is the interest in this type of programming? I have been introduced to a lot of industry, what we consider big wigs, the decision makers, and they all love the concept of coming from a very unscripted professional organization that is out there rescuing people from animal conflicts constantly, every day in and day out. Now, the bare hands thing, you know, I was tagged with that name in a negative reference some
Okay.
time ago, you know.
Yeah. All right. All
Uh,
right.
I was in a training class, and there was a picture of me
Yeah.
holding a bat
I
barehanded,
I think
and
I'm aware of that. Yes.
someone who is very into zoonotics did
Yeah.
not like that picture,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
was making negative comments, calling me bare hands Beran.
Okay.
So took the name and I ran with it because I
Ran with it.
liked it. I liked the name, you know. It was supposed to be a negative jab, you know, but I took
Right.
it and
Right.
ran
Right.
with it. And so, you know, people have called me bare hands Beran. Part of that is because I'm lazy and I don't want to go
Okay.
back to my truck and get gloves.
Right.
Part of it is that, especially when dealing with snakes, like snakes, just, you know, if you just don't squeeze them, they
Right.
just won't
Yeah.
bite you,
Right.
you know.
Right.
My disclaimer is this: always wear gloves and use proper
Right.
equipment. You know, that's
Yeah.
what you should do. Even in the pilot, there's a portion in there when I say, look, folks, you should wear proper PPE. You should have proper equipment. This doesn't work for everybody, but it works for me.
Right.
You know, when I'm barehanded, I can feel how much pressure I'm putting on that animal. You know, I can feel how the animal's reacting to me. And most of the time it goes without instance, you know.
Yeah.
It's so much easier for me to reach up into a fireplace above the smoke shelf and grab a squirrel with my bare hands. A lot of times when I have a glove on, I can't get my hand past the smoke shelf because of that 90-degree angle in there.
Yeah.
Barehanded, I can pull it up in there, pull the squirrel out, put him in a cage. Nothing, you know, no harm, no foul.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'm kind of aware, maybe not of the specific story, but certainly, yeah, it was there. Of course, our industry is definitely trying to get people to be safer out there. I figured when I heard bare hands that it was sort of a hook for the audience, you know, because it's definitely different. If you're going out there against an animal and you're in a moon suit, it doesn't have the cachet, right? It's because people
Right.
are watching a show for its being different and they're trying to be excited. They're trying to live a different life through you. And you're giving them that by the bare hands. So yeah, so everybody, we're not recommending this for you and your business. This is part of the show. Also, you've had a lot of experience with animals because you have raptors, and so you've been raising animals for long. Most of us aren't in that situation. So you're going to have a lot more hands-on, literally work with animals because you're raising them, right? It's not just a dog. Right. You're working with raptors, and I guess you have snakes as well that you have
Yes.
at your facility. So you're not just someone like me who's mostly behind a desk all the time, going out to maybe remove an animal on occasion. That's I should be wearing protection. So
yeah. Well, you know, a lot of my technicians, they don't buy into the whole bare hands thing.
Yeah,
they don't do it at all.
Yeah,
they want to. Yeah, I don't want them to.
Yeah.
They want to use proper equipment. They want to use proper PPE. You know, and so in the show, there is some of that banter going back and forth. Like, you know, they have the guys. We take care of a situation, and then they do the interviews with the guys, and the guys are like, I ain't feeling it. I'm not going in there barehanded. You know.
Well, I saw you with I saw you posted a video, I think it was on YouTube, where you're removing a beehive barehanded. And yeah. I'll tell you, that was impressive, because that was a huge hive. I forgot how many gallons you said you pulled out of that house.
72 pounds of honey and hive.
That was amazing. So
yeah, so you know that that particular bee extraction, we couldn't access it from the outside because of the way the construction was by that close to the fireplace. Plus, in St. Louis, every house has a basement, and so you've got this structural wood that they use above the basement wall, and the living room was the only spot where we could access this hive. And in addition, that hole that you see in that video, that was as big a hole as could be cut because they had 2x8s laid sideways, and they had this structure built out around the fireplace, and everywhere I would poke, I would hit a 2x8. And so I finally found a spot where there was no 2x8, and so I just started cutting, and that was as big a hole as we could make.
Yeah. Well, I was amazed at the video you took of it because it was such a confined space. You had pretty good lighting. So clearly you're learning something off the set, because you did some pretty good video with that work. And when you think about just a regular cell phone camera, let me hold up mine, how these are basically revolutionized our industry among a bunch of other industries. So, I mean, it was impressive. So yeah. We only have a few minutes left. So I want you to, what's next? So when will you find out if this is going to be turned into a regular, like your first season?
Well, today I had a very long Zoom meeting with Discovery Plus, with their digital marketing team and their public relations team. And they laid out their plan for this. And I can tell you it's impressive.
Oh, very good.
I'm not a big TikTok person at all. I don't own the app. I watch it when it comes across my Instagram occasionally, but just not a big fan. However, they are launching a massive TikTok campaign to get people to watch the streaming episode of the pilot, so that they can engage and see what the audience, and they're targeting an audience that's 23 to 35 years old.
Okay.
That's what they're targeting.
Wow. Okay. Makes sense.
They are launching a pretty massive campaign, and they're very interested in, they are not interested in all that much in the Animal Planet platform. They're really interested in the streaming platform. And I think that's going to make a big difference in how things are picked up. Yep. But they are running a marketing campaign that's 60 days after the launch of the pilot. Okay. And then they're going to analyze that data, and that's going to determine how many episodes they buy. So that's what I'm being told right now. So the words that are not being said are as important as the words that are said. And so they said the terminology and the verbiage that they use was they're going to analyze the data to see how many episodes they're going to buy.
Oh,
so that tells me without saying it. Right. Yeah.
It might be just one, but at least that would be pretty cool, right? So hopefully,
maybe, but they tend to go in multiples of 20s.
20s. Okay. Yeah. Well, that would be really cool. So is it possible this would be something streamed on, Netflix or Amazon, that sort of thing, that those platforms would pick it up? Is that the kind of the goal?
Yeah. So Netflix typically will wait until something has gone 2, 3, 4 seasons. Okay. And then they pick up season 1.
Gotcha.
And pull a thing. That's what they did with some TV shows like The Flash and The Walking Dead, and some of these other things, iZombie, some of that stuff. But yeah, so that would be the big purchase is they buy 20 episodes, and then that goes well, and then we get another 20 episodes. One of the great things that Animal Planet Discovery Plus loves about Wildlife Command Center is, one, we've got a multitude of really interesting characters in my technicians and my office staff, my animal handling staff. They also love the difference in locations and the difference in terrain in the different locations. To start with, the show is going to be showcased out of St. Louis, Reno, Nevada, and Sacramento, California.
Nice.
And that's my most Western offices. They love the Sierra Mountains of the Reno area. And then they're getting some great tax credits in California, in Sacramento area.
To finish up here, because I know you've got to leave here in a couple minutes, concerns about creative control. Are you concerned about that? Is that how, because you could be trying to be pushed into things that would be maybe you wouldn't want your name associated with, because you're already going to be, you're going to be getting criticized for the bare hands thing. That ever a concern of yours? And
so it was actually the reason we failed in one of our prior attempts because they would not give me creative control of content.
Yeah.
However, this go around, I just lucked out. I got an incredible talent agent out of California. The Gersh industry, the Gersh agency, it's just a well-known, well-established agency, and they negotiated a contract with Animal Planet that allows me to have a lot of creative control, and also allows me to not be backed into a corner and not have to go down paths that I don't want to go down.
Yeah.
There is going to be plenty of negative criticism that comes across. There's like that in anything we do in this day and age. I mean, there's
no, without a doubt.
all kinds of armchair quarterbacks out there.
And some of it's going to be envy rather than anything legit, right? So
there'll be some envy, there'll be some, but one of the things that's very interesting is that Animal Planet has asked me multiple times about bringing guest operators onto the show.
Oh, wow.
And the opportunity and the availability that if they want to do a show about a particular creature that's in an area that I'm not operating in, do I have the connections to reach out to the operators to see if anybody wants to come onto the show? So because we did set some ground rules of professionalism and also the types of things that we will do and not do, I think that once people see the show, I think I'm going to have an influx of operators wanting to be involved.
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah, they would definitely want to be on the show. Well, I know our time is up, and I want to be respectful of that. So, Michael, it's so glad to have you on the show, especially before you become even more famous on the show. So we're glad you came onto the Pest Geek podcast, Living the Wildlife edition here. Really appreciate it. So everyone, we just got to run down Michael's information here. So Michael Beran, he is the owner of Wildlife Command Center, headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri, and his pilot, Bare Hands Rescue, is coming out for the Animal Planet part of the Discovery Plus. So you can, if you don't have that on your cable system, you can download the app Discovery Plus, and it's going to be coming out August, I think you said 25th. Is that correct?
22nd, this
22nd,
Sunday.
excuse me, 22nd. So again, Discovery Plus, download your app for iPhone or Android, do some downloading, send him some love, because we can get him hopefully hooked up into his first year. That would be really great. And we hope to have you back on the show again. So Michael, thank you so much for your time, and wish you the best in your endeavors and safety in your endeavors as well.
All right. I appreciate it, Stephen. Thanks for having me on the show. I've been a big fan for a while. You have a great night.
Well, great. You too. Take care, everybody.